All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. So, today we are on the test server, and there is hard mode. We have a lot to talk about with this, but before we go into it, I would like everyone to keep in mind that this is the test server. It was built for feedback, and that is what I am looking to provide today, talking about how it is currently and how I think it should be changed before it properly releases to everybody. So, I have played about 16, 17 hours of this. And behind me, you can see the trophies of the planets that I completed, minus one because I don't have the Venus one due to a bug. So, I completed 6 planets. And to get the Void one, obviously I had to go through most of the star chart, barring Eris, and experience a lot of those missions on the way to get the Void one. With that, let's talk about my experience going through all that and kind of how it feels. And then after that, we're going to talk about the rewards. So, how does it feel is a hard question because, for those of you that don't know what this is adding, you go and you talk to Teshin, and he gives you the Steel Path as long as you have completed an arbitration, which you need to have completed the entire star chart to unlock arbitrations. You do an arbitration, you get this. What this is right here on the right, you can switch between normal mode and the Steel Path. Now, the Steel Path is plus 100 enemy level, and there's also 2 boosters you get, which is resource drop chance and mod drop chance. Those are nice for a variety of reasons we'll talk about later, but there is also an additional modifier on enemies that is not listed here as it was added last minute to the test server, and that is that enemies have double health, and they have the sortie modifiers for shields and armor. That makes enemies really, really chunky. Like, real chunky. And considering that every single mission on the whole star chart is above level 100, because even the very first node, E Prime, is starting at level 101, these enemies are hard to kill. And that means that it has narrowed the useful items overall in the game. I have been playing a ton of Korra, because thankfully the new Zorus Korra build is great here. And along with that, I have actually been playing some Baruch, because Baruch is way better whenever you have enemies that can actually survive for a little while, as it allows him to build a ton of meter. So that's actually been useful, which has been a wild experience. On top of that, some of the immediate options you would think would be really good, such as Saren and Mesa, have needed a little bit of help. For Mesa, her 4 really doesn't kill much unless she is at full focus. So it takes her a little bit to get going, and it's very energy intensive to do that. So that has been an experience, because usually we're all used to Mesa annihilating anything that she sees. And as for Saren, on Saren, I'm usually building for 199% strength. And with that, that has not been enough to comfortably clear missions in the kind of upper half of the star chart, because enemy health values are so obscenely high. For the first time in a long time, I've legitimately been using Octavia and actually had to redo Octavia's build to optimize it a little bit more, so that I can use her infinite scaling to, do Octavia things to a few missions. That has been an experience, because I haven't done that in a good long time. And Warframes that would normally be considered quite survivable, like Oberon, basically feel like useless tissue paper. And for most of the Warframes, it has made me consider changing my builds to more revolve around exploiting how shield gates work and regenerating lots of shields kind of no matter what Warframe I'm on, and using like dragon decaying keys to get my shield values lower for a variety of reasons. And that stuff has been really engaging for me to have to, rethink about what I'm using. It really doesn't cut it to just use weapons that I like the Kuva Kortak. I really love this weapon. It's not going to do enough damage. Like, plain and simple, shooting this at enemies tickles them, and they don't care. You basically have to use weapons like the Kuva Nukor, which is going to hit a ton of enemies and apply a shit zillion status in order to take enemies down, or you have to use melee weapons, because melee is the strongest weapon type by far, to cleave through enemies, and a lot of that has to also do with status stuff. On top of that, some other things that have been useful is the Phage, actually. But it's worth noting this weapon actually needed to be formatted on the test server so that I could add the cleanse mods. And I actually have 2 builds that it was necessary to have, which is one is corrosive viral heat for dealing with corrupted and Grenier. And the other is purely for Corpus, because their shields are so high. Switching to a toxin build was actually kind of the only way a primary weapon was going to be useful in any way, shape, or form. I've found most primary weapons to be useless, including sniper rifles. Sniper rifles do basically nothing to anything that you would normally fire a sniper rifle at, so you need kind of other solutions or heavy sustained fire to really get anything done. So snipers are kind of out the door, including, like, you know, fully formed Rubico primes and all that kind of business. And that is how the gameplay is kind of broken down so far. It has been interesting. I've had a good time with it. It is certainly kind of a different way to approach these missions, and I think that has some amount of value. However, in a lot of areas, it is not very fun. And those areas, namely, are Arcwing missions, because as it turns out, whenever you add 100 levels to Arcwing missions and double all the enemies' health and give them enhanced armor and shields, it becomes an absolute dreadful slog to get through these enemies, because unlike our regular arsenals, which have solutions to kind of any problem we could realistically come across in terms of, you know, doing damage in one way or another, or like needing certain kinds of crowd control and stuff like that, Arcwing doesn't have that. And even your fully modded, like, most powerful weapons, like your Velocitus and your Imperator Vandals and all this business, no matter how you're going to mod them, it's going to do little to nothing, even on Urpo, which is an extremely early Arcwing mission. Even fully charged Velocitus shots, you need to shoot like 4 of them to kill basic enemies, and it is absolutely dreadful. Along with that, Oro, which we have here, which is our Vehek mission. Vehek is a boss that is, plain and simple, not very good. He has a hard damage cap on how much damage he can take every time he opens his vulnerability spot, and he sits in it for a long time, and you sit there and stare at him until he opens his weakness, and then you shoot it, and then he closes it right back up, and you continue to wait. That boss fight is extremely large, or extremely lame, as it were. And I've even heard of people on the test cluster timing out of their mission, waiting for Vehek to, waiting to get enough damage to actually kill Vehek. I completed that mission, obviously, because I just have the gear for it, but missions like that aren't fun. With that, the rewards that we're talking about here are pretty limited. We have, obviously, the drop chance boosters, both for mods and for resources here, and that's something, and makes it so that it is pretty reasonable to go somewhere like Vodyanoi. And if you were to have this mod drop chance booster plus your own regular mod drop chance booster, you'd be getting an extremely large amount of endo per run, and that has value. But outside of that, all the drops and stuff here are pretty lackluster. Whenever you complete a planet, you do get one of these statues, which is great. As you can see here, these look fantastic, except for the Lua one, which is an absolute abomination and not what that planet looks like at all. But for the rest of them, they look great. I love these ship decorations. Wonderful. Good little incentive to go through this. In addition to that, there are emotes that you get for completing these planets. Not all of the planets seem to have an emote. As far as I've gone through on these, I think only 3 of the 6 have emotes, or although one of them I didn't get anything at all. So 3 of the 5, let's say, have emotes, and basically these show a little hologram of the planet itself. And sadly, they are all just the same pose. They all do the big flex. And while I like this emote, it would have been cooler if they were, you know, different emotes for each of the planets. Or something that we don't know about yet. Like if you complete everything, if there's like a big special emote at the end or some other such cosmetic reward, I think would also be really cool. But these statues and stuff are not all for the kind of general overarching rewards. There's also, if we go into the profile, you can see that there are the Steel Path missions listed here in Mastery, and these missions do give Mastery. Now, to my knowledge, they give 27,501 Mastery, just as the culmination of all the regular missions do. Now, as much as I would like it to be 27,499 Mastery, so that we no longer have just stragglers in terms of our Mastery, this means that it's worth the same amount as the full star chart. So you're going to get another 27,000 Mastery out of this, which is equivalent to a little over 9 weapons worth. And that's a considerable chunk. If you're a Mastery hunter, you're going to want to go through this content for that. So those are some pretty compelling reasons to go through this content. The enhanced Vodyanoi and some nice cosmetics and such. However, everything else here has pretty much been left alone. Like if you're on Earth and you're on Mantle or like on in the interception here, all the drops, all the rotation rewards are exactly the same, and it really is not going to incentivize you, as far as I've seen, to do any kind of an endless anything on this entire star chart. And because the enemy levels are so much higher than usual, that is kind of doubly so. Because before it was like, well, we can stay 40 minutes in a mission because these enemies aren't really of level, and we can just get a few sets of rotations in on the regular star chart. Here, it starts off on a level where you're like, we're going to do this and just get out. And because there's no incentive for you to stay rewards based, you're going to get the completion and move on, which is what I had been doing, of course. For that, I think this can be remedied pretty easily. Obviously, there's the solution that everyone would think of, which is, well, why don't you just take all of the drop tables in the entire star chart and audit them and remove all the useless stuff. Remove the vitality mods, remove like the low credit caches, like bump up all the endo across like the entirety of the whole star chart. That's technically an option, right? You could do that, but what I think personally would be more interesting is if DE took the opportunity of hard mode to create designed loot caves, for lack of a better term. A great example of this would be if we look at Eris. We have Jinny. Jinny is classically used to farm Axie relics. This is like one of like the chill Axie relic farming locations. If they took that and they're like, okay, people come to Eris and they want to farm Axie relics. If you take it to a hard mode level and you go, okay, we're not going to make Jinny just way better for Axie relics on hard mode. Instead, you remix it and you take Zavala, which is like a survival mission. It's a little bit different, right? You take this mission and you're like, let's juice just this mission. Out of all these nodes on this whole planet, let's just juice Zavala on hard mode, and let's make it so that every single rotation on Zavala is all Axie relics and they're all radiant. Now, if you take this mission and do that, that means that there is a large incentive for someone to do hard mode, because not only are you going to only get Axie relics, which is of course the point of Axie relic farming, you're also going to get them at radiant, which means you don't have to farm traces for them. Something like that I think would be really compelling, and that is a repeatable type thing that you can do across the whole star chart. Like if we look at Mars, Spear is a relatively popular farming location for low tier relics. And if you simply take this is a defense, and you're like, okay, let's mix it up and choose somewhere else on Mars. Let's say Alator. This is an interception. Same tile set, all that business. Let's juice this and give it like radiant versions of these relics and push people that are able to play hard mode into this node. I think that would do two things that are rather important. It would give repeated use to this higher difficulty mode and incentivize those players to congregate on these nodes. Because plain and simple, the requirements for getting to the hard mode star chart are pretty steep. You need to complete all the missions on the star chart. Already pretty steep ask. On top of that, you got to do an arbitration, and then you need the gear to actually be able to do these missions as they stand right now. I think it's super reasonable to take the what I think to be small community of people able to do that, and kind of focus them in certain spots where it's like Alator is the mission here that we're gonna be like, okay, this is the area where we're kind of telling players like, hey, you can farm this type of relic here. Or on Eris, it's like, hey, Zabala is like really good for this type of relic, and doing that throughout the star chart here kind of mimics what we already have in the regular star chart, where like you look at Sedna and Hydron is the experience farming node for a lot of players, and like I was saying, like Ginny is the node there, and you're kind of just building in these zones for people to congregate on naturally in the hard mode star chart. I think that would be an easy solution in making this much more long-term content. Like, just take the void. People love to run Mott for whatever reason, right? Put a really like heavy set of rewards here. Like, this mission is not only the final mission in the star chart, but it's also like got the 4x damage multiplier on enemies that is a residual from the old tower system. So if you take Mott and you say, okay, because of all these factors, we're going to have it be rotation A is 1,000 endo every time, and rotation B is 100,000 credits, and then like just all this stuff, you can give people incentives to go to these types of areas outside of just the want to do it, which some nodes just have for certain types of players. Putting like the actual rewards there means that whenever a player that just wants to do Mott comes here, they're more likely to get a group. And I think that is a distinct advantage that DE could build into this star chart as a whole. But yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities to make this worthwhile. And for me personally, just getting these nice ship decorations and like getting the emotes and stuff is probably enough incentive for me personally. But as we all know, I play a ton of Warframe and really like it, and I love optimizing stuff. So like partially just the problem solving of the things on the star chart also appeals to me. But I would also like, you know, once I'm done with it, I don't want it to be content that I just forget about and isn't really important. I would love for it to be a thing where it's like, hey, this is the set of Steel Path farms that exist, and it's a reason to come do this later on after I've completed everything once. But yeah, those are kind of generally some of my thoughts on the Steel Path. I think it's really cool conceptually. I'm glad Teshin is finally getting some time in the spotlight. He's deserved it for a good long time. And yeah, it's pretty compelling. Hopefully they can make it more compelling for more of a long-term thing. And very enjoyable. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow. Also, hey, just right here at the end, tomorrow I'm going to be posting a run of how the spawn rates and stuff look in the Steel Path, as they are also much improved. So look forward to that. If you want to see kind of how these missions run, it's going to be some Korra gameplay and kind of pushing her to, you know, the heights of Korra-ness, as it were.